Do you want to call down beams of light from the heavens while shooting beams of light from your hands? Do you want to heal your allies while doing damage? Do you want to play the best College of Moonbard build possible by mostly being a sorcerer? Then this is the build for you. Hi guys, I'm Warners and I'm back with another build video for you today. So this is our second build since Forgotten Realms Heroes of Faerun came out, and I'm going to be utilizing 2 of the new subclasses from that book as well as a few feats from that book to make a really interesting and powerful build. It mostly focuses on concentrating on Moonbeam, and then with Quickened spell Metamagic, shooting off the brand new spell Spellfire Flare. With the new College of Moonbard, we're able to heal our allies when enemies fail their saving throw on Moonbeam, and then when I shoot out Spellfire Flares, I'm going to be using my sorcery points to do Quicken spell, and when you consume sorcery points with the Spellfire Sorcery Sorcerer, you're able to also give out temporary hit points. So this build is actually very easy to play, and because you're going to be in 2 full caster classes, you're going to have a lot of options besides the main build rotation. So yeah. Also, before I get too deep into it, every month I come out with a 2024 rules compatible subclass PDF on my Patreon, and this month I came out with the Inquisitor Rogue. So if that sounds interesting to you, just go ahead and click the link down below and visit my Patreon. For $2, you get to see my videos a little bit early, and for $3, you get access to all of my PDFs, including the new one. With that out of the way though, let's go ahead and get into the build. So I decided to go with the new Spellfire Initiate background, which is very fitting for this build that's going to be very Spellfire focused anyway. It reads, "You bear the gift of Spellfire, a rare form of magic that channels the raw power of the weave. Wielding Spellfire takes a heavy toll on the body. You've trained both mind and body to efficiently wield this sacred power. You get a skill proficiency in perception and 1 other skill. I decided to go with stealth because this build doesn't have access to stealth proficiency otherwise, and that's a pretty good proficiency to have, especially on a caster that is kind of squishy. You also get a gaming set, just pick your favorite, and then you get to choose between Constitution, Intelligence, or Charisma. We're going 2 in Charisma, and we're going 1 in Constitution. And then you get Spellfire Spark. Gain the following benefits: magic absorption. Once per turn, when you take damage from a spell or magical effect, you reduce the total damage by 1d4. You can't use this benefit if you have the incapacitated condition, and that isn't a reaction. Just anytime you take spell damage, you can minus a d4 from the damage. Not huge, but it's not bad. And you can just do it every single time you take damage. And then you get Spellfire Flame. You learn the Sacred Flame cantrip, and you choose between Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. We're obviously choosing Charisma as your spellcasting ability for this spell. And you can also cast this cantrip as a bonus action, a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. We're actually going to be using this for our first damage breakdown, so this is a nice little low-level ability. It's probably useful later on too if you're trying to conserve resources. So yeah, just a nice little bonus action cantrip for when you don't want to use it on Quicken spell. And then for species, I decided to go with Goliath, specifically the Fire Ancestry. We're a Spellfire Sorcerer, I might as well add some more fire to it. So basically a number of times equal to our proficiency bonus, we're able to add 1d10 to any attack roll in fire damage. So that's pretty sweet. We also have Powerful Build. We can, as a bonus action, become large size. I won't specifically be utilizing this in this build, but it's still useful to have. Oh, also our speed is 35 instead of 30 as a Goliath. We also have advantage on ending the grappled condition, and we can carry more stuff basically. For ability scores, we're going 8 in strength, 15 in dexterity, 15 in con with a +1, making it a 16, 8 intelligence, 8 wisdom, 15 in charisma with the +2, making it a 17. And then level 1, we're actually going to be going sorcerer. This is so we can get our con saving throw proficiency. And for these first level spells, I'm going to pick mostly damaging cantrips because we're going to go into bard at level 2, and we can get basically all the non-damaging cantrips from bard. So I went with Firebolt, Mind Sliver, Ray of Frost, Sorcerous Burst, all nice ones to have. We're going to pick up Spellfire Flare and Shield. You also might want to consider picking up mage armor maybe before you pick up shield, but you're going to be able to get light armor proficiency from bard at level 2, so it just depends on like if you're actually starting at level 1 or if you are planning to start at level 2 or 3, which a lot of campaigns do anyway. You'll probably wear light armor at the beginning, but mage armor is going to be better than any basic light armor, so keep that in mind. And with level 1 done, let's go ahead and go to D&D Beyond, and I can show you in more details levels 2 to 6. Alright, as I said, Sorcerer level 1. Level 2, we're going Bard 1. For core Bard traits, I'm going to go with Harp and Investigation. Harp, just because the College of Moon Bard art, the character is playing a harp, and I just feel like that's kind of fitting for this character. And Investigation, because that's just a good proficiency to have. We get Bardic Inspiration. You guys all know what Bardic Inspiration is. We get Spellcasting. I'm going to go over the spells once I get to level 5, just so I can go over them all at once. Most of them are just pick your favorite though. I'll just give some honorable mentions when I get to that section. Level 3 character, level 2 bard, we get expertise and 2 skills. I went ahead and went with perception and stealth just because I think those are very important skills to have. And we're now half proficient in all skills with Jack of all trades. And the bard subclass we're going with today is College of the Moon Bard, brand new bard. For level 3 bard, level 4 character, we get Moon's Inspiration. We get 2 abilities. Basically, Inspired Eclipse means that when we give out a Bardic Inspiration, we can then teleport 30 feet and we can go invisible until the end of our next turn. But we want to make sure we do this after we use our action and not before, because if we use an action for basically anything, our invisibility goes away. One thing to keep in mind for this whole build is when I'm doing the damage per round, that is when we are 100% in offensive mode, just trying to do as much damage as possible. But when you actually play this build at a table, you're going to be using all your abilities depending on the situation you're in. So I'm not going to be mentioning this ability much, but you're definitely going to be able to use it, and you're going to be using it a lot in actual play. Then you get Lunar Vitality. This is not a very good ability at this level. You can use a Bardic Inspiration to add Bardic Inspiration in healing to a healing spell, which isn't really worth it when we have Inspired Eclipse, which is a much better feature to use those Bardic Inspiration on. Level 3, we also get Primal Lore. We get to choose between Animal Handling, Insight, Medicine, Nature, Perception, or Survival for a skill. And we also get to pick a Druid cantrip. Honestly, pick whatever you want. I clicked Nature on here, but honestly, I probably would want to do Survival, probably a bit more useful of a skill. And I went ahead and went with Thorn Whip for the cantrip. There's not many cantrips that Druids have that bards and sorcerers don't have access to, so that's why I went with Thorn Whip. It's one of the only ones. And then level 4 bard, level 5 character, we get our first feat, and I decided to go with the new Fairy Trickster feat. So we get to raise our dexterity or charisma. I went with charisma, get our charisma up to 18, and we get this interesting disengage buff. Basically, when we take the disengage action on our turn, difficult terrain doesn't cost you extra movement for the rest of that turn. Very situational, probably is not going to come up, especially for this build that doesn't have a bonus action disengage. But I guess if we're fighting someone and there's difficult terrain, this will be useful, but it's way more for the Flustering Strike ability. When you hit a creature with an attack roll, that can be a weapon or a spell, you can attempt to fluster the target. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, DC 8 plus the ability modifier of the score increased by this feat and your proficiency bonus. It's going to be the same as our spell save DC, or have disadvantage on saving throws until the end of your next turn, and you can do it proficiency bonus times per day. This will be great for a Moonbeam build. Again, we can only do it to one target. Actually, I just realized that technically it's not limited to one target per turn. That's actually kind of crazy. This makes the ability even better. You're going to use the uses a lot though, because all it says is when you hit a creature with an attack roll, you can attempt to fluster the target. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or have disadvantage on saving throws until the end of your next turn. You can use this benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. It says nowhere once per turn. turn. I already did the DPR though, so I did the DPR for one target failing this saving throw, and I assume that that one target has disadvantage on saves. Also, one thing that's great about this ability is it's until the end of your next turn. So if you use Flustering Strike and they fail the saving throw, if you use Flustering Strike the next turn, they have disadvantage against the saving throw against Flustering Strike. So it kind of becomes a chain reaction thing where you can just keep having this debuff on them, most likely. But yeah, if you're doing multiple hits per turn and they succeed, you can hit them again and try again, but it consumes a use each time. So that's kind of good to know. And then a level 5 bard, level 6 character, we get Font of Inspiration. You now regain all of your expended uses of bardic inspiration when you finish a short or long rest. In addition, you can expend a spell slot, no action required, to regain one expended use of your bardic inspiration. With us being a sorcerer bard, we can use our spell slots for bardic inspiration or for sorcery points, so that's kind of fun. And with that done, let's go ahead and go into the DPR for level 6. By the way, the website I use to calculate damage, this is dprcalc.com. The guy that runs it is a really friendly guy. He has a Discord where you can literally just like let him know anything you would like him to add to the website or anything you've noticed that's wrong with it. Very responsive, very cool guy. I already did all the math and I have it all written down. I just have this on screen so you can kind of see my stats, you can see my to hit and all that stuff. If what I'm saying doesn't match what's on the screen, just know that's why. I have it all figured out. So for round 1, even though we are just 1 level in sorcerer, we do get innate sorcery. This is the new sorcerer, basically sorcerer rage ability. We use our bonus action, and for the next minute we have advantage on all of our spell attacks with sorcerer spells, and any saving throw spell that we cast that's a sorcerer spell specifically, you get a +1 to the saving throw DC. And then with our action, we cast Spellfire Flare at 3rd level, and all the attack rolls will be at advantage. And with whatever hit that hits the target, we're going to use the fairy trickery ability, Flustering Strike is what I think it's called, and we're going to make it so that they have disadvantage on saving throws. And then as our bonus action, we're going to use our Spellfire Origin feat to cast Sacred Flame as a bonus action, and that save is going to be made at disadvantage. Also, I forgot to mention, for the first hit of Spellfire Flare, we're also going to add the 1d10 that we get from our Fire Giant ancestry. So round 1, activate innate sorcery. Then we use our action to cast Spellfire Flare, and we do our Flustering Strike, and we do the Fire Giant 1d10. And then the next round of combat comes along, and we do the exact same thing, except we already have innate sorcery up. So instead, with our bonus action this round, we're going to cast Sacred Flame with our Spellfire Origin feat. And then round 3, we're going to do the exact same thing. Every single time we are casting Flustering Strike to hopefully make that bonus action Sacred Flame saving throw at disadvantage. And then round 4, we ran out of 3rd level spells. So now we're going to be casting Spellfire Flare at 2nd level. And we also ran out of Fire Giant D10s. So we don't have that for our last round of combat, but we still do have our bonus action Sacred Flame. And after all 4 of those rounds, the level 6 average DPR is 36.5. Pretty good for level 6. Also, I feel like I should talk about Spellfire Flare because I haven't talked about it in this video yet. So it's a 1st level evocation spell, action casting time, 60-foot range, and you unleash a blast of brilliant fire, make a ranged spell attack against a target within range. The target gains no benefit from half cover or 3/4 cover. For this attack roll, on a hit, the target takes 2d10 radiant damage, and then we can upcast it using a higher level spell slot. You create an additional blast for each spell slot level above 1. You can direct the blast at the same target or at different ones, making a separate attack for each blast. So yeah, that's why the damage is so high, because we get 2d10 per spell slot level. And already at level 6, we're casting them at 3rd level. So yeah, that is 6d10 and then Sacred Flame. Pretty nice. All right, and then from levels 7 to 9, we're going to be going 2 more levels into Sorcerer. I totally forgot to mention that at level 7, we're going to be going into Bard for 1 more level, so we can acquire the level 6 ability, Blessing of Moonlight. You always have the Moonbeam spell prepared. When you cast Moonbeam, you can modify the spell so that you glow faintly while the spell is active. While glowing, you shed dim light out to 5 feet, and whenever a creature fails its saving throw against the effects of this Moonbeam, another creature of your choice that you can see within 60 feet of yourself regains 2d4 hit points. Once you use this feature to modify a casting of Moonbeam, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. And then Moonbeam has changed in the 2024 rules. It's a 2nd level spell, casting time of an action, range 120 feet, 1 minute concentration spell. A silvery beam of pale light shines down in a 5-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder centered on a point within range. That's 4 squares on a grid. Until the spell ends, dim light fills the cylinder, and you can take a magic action on later turns to move the cylinder up to 60 feet. When the cylinder appears, each creature in it makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 2d10 radiant damage, and if the creature is shapeshifted as a result of the polymorph spell, for example, it reverts to its true form and can't shapeshift until it leaves the cylinder. On a successful save, a creature takes half as much damage only. A creature also makes this save when the spell's area moves into its space and when it enters the spell's area or ends its turn there. A creature makes this save only once per turn. And then using a higher level spell slot, the damage increases by 1d10 for each spell slot level above 2nd. So what this means is now we can, as an action, move Moonbeam 60 feet, and it specifically says a creature also makes this save when the spell's area moves into its space. So we can just have the beam do damage to all creatures that it moves into their space when we move the cylinder 60 feet across the battlefield. And then uniquely with this subclass, every time a creature fails their save, we can heal someone 2d4 hit points. So pretty nice. Level 2 sorcerer, we get Metamagic, and we also get Font of Magic. One thing to keep in mind about Font of Magic, we can convert spell slots to sorcery points, and we can expend a spell slot to gain a number of sorcery points equal to the slot's level. No action required. And we are going to be using this a lot, especially here at low levels, because we don't have a lot of sorcery points, and so we're going to need to utilize our lower level spell slots to be able to upcast so that we can use more sorcery points, specifically in this build to use Quicken spell as much as possible. And that being said, our metamatic options are going to be Quicken spell, and then the second option can be whatever you want. Technically, Spellfire Flare does qualify for twinned spell, so you could basically use a sorcery point to hit one more target. I didn't do that for the damage calculations because you can only use one sorcery point option at lower levels anyway, and twin spell was a lot more important. So I went with subtle spell, mostly for out of combat reasons, and if you really don't want to get something counterspelled. And then finally, at sorcerer level 3, character level 9, we get our sorcerer subclass. We're going the new subclass, the Spellfire Sorcery Sorcerer. A lot of S's in that. Sorry if I slur a bit. We get 2 abilities. We get Spellfire Burst and Spellfire Spells. So for Spellfire Burst, when you spend at least 1 sorcery point as part of the magic action or as a bonus action on your turn, you can unleash one of the following magical effects of your choice. You can do so only once per turn. We get Bolstering Flames. You or one creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself gains temporary hit points equal to 1d4 plus your charisma modifier. And then we also get Radiant Fire. One creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself takes 1d4 fire or radiant damage, your choice. I decided for the DPR calculations, we're not going to go with Radiant Fire because it's not that big of a damage boost anyway, and I decided to go with Bolstering Flames, and I'm going to have the damage per round, and I'm going to separately have the expected healing per round. Temporary hit points technically isn't healing, but since the Moonbeam feature has a healing component, and then we also can do this within the same turn, I decided to just combine them together, because even though it's not healing, it does a very similar thing to healing, and I'm going to have a separate healing per round, so that's going to be cool. And then we get Spellfire fire spells, we get Cure Wounds, Guiding Bolt, Lesser Restoration, Scorching Ray, Aura of Vitality, Dispel Magic, Fire Shield, Wall of Fire, Greater Restoration, and Flame Strike. Cure Wounds was already available to us as a bard, but now we just get it automatically prepared, so that's super solid. Guiding Bolt and Scorching Ray are pretty good options, but because Spellfire Flare exists, I don't really see a need for these spells on this list, honestly. It probably won't help us much. And then Lesser Restoration is a very good spell to have, especially because it is now a bonus action to cast it. Aura of Vitality is a pretty solid healing spell. Dispel Magic is a spell we would probably take anyway, so to have it automatically is nice. Fire Shield isn't going to be great for this build because it's definitely not a tanky build, but maybe throw it on every once in a while if you feel like you're going to get hit a lot. Wall of Fire is a super solid wall spell. Really like it on this list. Greater Restoration, again, super solid. Not a spell that sorcerers normally get. And then Flame Strike isn't great at all, but it's basically a worse fireball. I guess it's better than nothing. But let's go ahead and go over the damage per round. All right, so here at level 9, our rotation is going to be round 1, we cast Moonbeam at level 5, then we bonus action Innate Sorcery. If I didn't already mention this, Innate Sorcery makes it so we have advantage on our sorcerer spell attack rolls, and we get to add a +1 to our saving throws for sorcerer spells. Moonbeam is not a sorcerer spell, so we can't do that with Moonbeam, but we are going to be able to make all of our Spellfire Flare attacks at advantage, so that's nice. For the Moonbeam round, for round 1, you can just place it in an area and it deals damage to the people in that area. Because of that, I have it hit only 1 target in round 1, and then in round 2, 3, and 4, I have it hit 3 targets because I feel like it is reasonable to hit 3 targets if you can move it 60 feet through them. But when you just plop it down somewhere, you're probably not going to get more than 1 target. So round 1, it's just 1 guy gets hit with Moonbeam. The damage is 19.1 DPR. Then round 2 comes around, we cast Spellfire Flare at level 4 at advantage, so that shoots 4 separate beams. One of those beams, I add the Fire Giant D10 to it. I use the Fairy Trickster feat to hit one of those targets, so they have disadvantage on saving throws until the end of our next turn. And because of that, then as my action, I move the Moonbeam. I calculated that one of these 3 enemies will be making the saving throw a disadvantage, so they'll be taking a little bit more damage on average. So again, Spellfire Flare at 4th level, moving the 5th level Moonbeam as my action, adding the Fire Giant D10 on Spellfire Flare. The average DPR for that round, in all the rounds from round 2 to 4, it's 107.1 DPR. And that makes our average level 9 DPR 85.1. And remember, with the Bolstering Flames ability, every single time we use a sorcery point, we're able to give someone 1d4 plus our charisma mod and temporary hit points. And we use a sorcery point for 3 out of the 4 rounds. And then also, every time someone fails a saving throw on Moonbeam, I get to heal someone 2d4 hit points. I decided for the healing calculations on the Moonbeam damage that because one of the 3 makes their save a disadvantage, I'm going to say that out of the 3, 2 fail their save, so we get to do a total of 4d4 healing per round after round 1, of course. So the average healing per round, again, remember that's including temporary hit points, is 13.6, which is pretty nice for the amount of damage we're also doing. All right, so we have level 10, 11, and 12. We're going into Sorcerer for all of those levels. I picked up some spells you might consider adding to your list. Misty Step, Dispel Magic is already prepared, so I actually don't need to add that because we already get that on our subclass spell list. But Fly, Gaseous Form, Death Armor is kind of a good new spell that could possibly be handy. Helps with support as well. Makes it so that the target has advantage on death saves, and once per turn they deal 2d4 necrotic damage if they're hit by a melee attack roll within 5 feet of them. Lasts for an hour, no concentration. Nice little defensive spell. And then we also can do this Leyral's Silver Lance. It's basically a force damage lightning bolt that does a good amount of less damage, but also knocks targets prone. So just kind of a good spell to have just so that we have more options. Not going to be a part of this build really, but nice new spells to kind of mention. But as far as level progression, at level 4, we get a new feat or ability score improvement. And I went into to dexterity and charisma. This is kind of odd because you think I would just max out my charisma, but actually I'm trying to get a specific feat later on that's a half feat that will up my charisma to 20. And in the meantime, I wanted to go ahead and get my dexterity up just so that my armor class isn't too bad. So this makes our dexterity 16, so our armor class went up by 1, and it makes it so that our next feat we will cap out our charisma. Then level 5 we'll get sorceress restoration. When you finish a short rest, you can regain expended sorcery points, but no more than a number equal to half your sorcerer level rounded down. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. This will be nice because we are using sorcery points a lot. So it'll be good to get a little bit of recovery. And then we get this really cool ability called absorb spells. You always have the counterspell spell prepared. Additionally, whenever a target fails the saving throw against a counterspell you cast, you regain 1d4 sorcery points. So this isn't going to come up very often, but when it does, it'll be really nice. I would definitely be more wanting to play this character if I knew that the villains in the campaign I was playing in were most likely spellcasters, which honestly it is a pretty common trope to have the lich or the evil wizard or insert fantasy villain type here that casts spells, you know? So yeah, I feel like it's pretty common, pretty solid options. And let's go ahead and go over the level 12 DPR, why not? This will be a pretty quick one because it is the exact same rotation as the last one, but we just have higher spell slots, and so the damage will be higher. The healing will be literally the same though. But anyway, let's go over it. So round 1, where we just cast Moonbeam on one target and we activate innate sorcery, we do 22.11 DPR. Round 2 and 3, we're moving the Moonbeam, Spellfire Flare, this time at level 5, and we're adding the Fire Giant D10. The DPRs for both of these rounds is 124.29. So our numbers are getting real high. And then round 3, we don't have any more 5th level slots, so we're doing the level 4 casting of Spellfire Flare, and that's 114.65. And so that makes our total average DPR here at level 12 96.3. And the healing per round is exactly the same at 13.6. We're hitting the same amount of targets, and our charisma score hasn't gone up yet, and there is no scaling really with the Moonbeam healing anyway. So yeah. All right, so we have level 13, 14, and 15, and just like always, this is all going to be into Sorcerer. Level 7 Sorcerer, we get Sorcery Incarnate. If you have no uses of innate sorcery left, you can use it if you spend 2 sorcery points when you take the bonus action to activate it. In addition, while your innate sorcery feature is active, you can use up to 2 of your metamagic options on each spell you cast. So yeah, this is when, if you wanted to, you could cast Twin Spell on Spellfire Flare with your Quickened spell. I'm not doing that in this build for the damage calculations, but technically you'd be doing more damage. Not much, like around 10-ish more damage, but just something to consider. And then we get ability score improvement, and we went with Spellfire Adept. This feat is going to be basically on any build that uses radiant damage or attack roll spells. And technically it works for saving throw spells also. But this is a great feat. And let's go ahead and read the important bits. So we get to add +1 to our mental stats. So we're going to get our charisma to 20 with this feat. And then we get fueled spellfire once per turn. When a spell you cast deals radiant damage, you can expend up to 2 hit point dice, roll them, and add the total rolled to 1 damage roll of the spell. So that means that when we first cast Moonbeam, we are able to add these hit dice to the damage, but not for when we move it, because it's not us casting the spell on subsequent rounds. But we then can add this damage to our Spellfire Flares, because that's again casting a spell that does radiant damage. And then also we get Searing Spellfire. When you make a damage roll that deals radiant damage, it ignores resistance to radiant damage. Radiant damage resistance doesn't happen very often, but when it does, this will be nice since this build is centered solely around radiant damage anyway. Because we're mostly sorcerer with only a few levels in Bard, most of our hit point dice are D6s, but we do have some D8s from Bard, and we will be utilizing both of them for the damage calculation. And we got a new spell level, so I'll mention some possible spells you could take. Dimension Door is a great spell to have on this build. Greater Invisibility is just kind of thematic since the Moon Bard gives us the invisibility option anyway when we give out Bard Against inspiration. Spellfire Storm is just a nice pick because of the thematics of this Spellfire Sorcery Sorcerer. It's a pretty cool spell too, just like some of our subclass abilities. It's a pretty good anti-caster spell. When a creature casts the spell in the cylinder, they have to make a con saving throw, and if they fail, the spell dissipates. Basically, it's an automatic counter spell while they're in the spell's radius, so that's kind of cool. And then Synaptic Static is just a great spell. Deals some good psychic damage, and it subtracts a d6 from the target's attack rolls and ability checks if they fail an intelligence save. So super solid spell to have. Let's go over the level 15 damage per round though. So just like the past 2 damage per rounds, it is the exact same rotation, but now we get to add our hit dice to the damage rolls. And obviously we have way higher level spell slots now. So round 1, we cast Moonbeam on 1 target at 8th level. We bonus action activate Innate Sorcery. And then when we deal radiant damage to the target, we add 2d8 radiant damage from our hit dice. And that makes the total damage for that round 40.52 on that 1 target. And then round 2, 3, and 4 is the usual. Hit 3 targets with moving Moonbeam, bonus action Spellfire Flare. Round 2, it's a level 7 Spellfire Flare. We add the 2d8 hit dice to the radiant damage, and we add the 1d10 from the Fire Giant ability. That is 190 DPR. Round 3, it's the exact same thing, but the Spellfire Flare is a level 6 spell, and the DPR for that is 179.27. And then round 4 is also the exact same thing, but the Spellfire Flare is level 5, and now we're out of barred hit dice, so the extra damage from Spellfire Adept are now 2d6s, and that is 166.61 DPR. So that makes our average DPR here at level 15 144.1 DPR. Very, very nice. And because our charisma mod is higher now, our healing per round here is 14.4. All right, for levels 16 and 17, we actually do not gain any new features except for spell slots being higher and getting access to new spells. These are all pick your favorite. I picked spells that I thought were thematic and fun. So I got Wall of Light, Fizzband's Platinum Shield, and Sunbeam. All just very thematic spells for this character. But you're a sorcerer, you can pick any 6 level spells that you feel like would be useful on this character. This DPR is our smallest disparity between DPR countdowns, only 2 levels, and we now have a level 9 Moonbeam. Honestly, I don't think I would recommend using a level 9 spell slot on an upcast Moonbeam, but this is mostly just to see what you could do if you decided to fully commit to the subclass ability that the Moonbard gives. Besides spell levels, everything about this is exactly the same as the last DPR calculation. So for round 1, it is 40.52 DPR. For round 2, you have a level 8 Spellfire Flare with that level 9 Moonbeam that you're moving around for 213.38 DPR. Round 3, level 7 Spellfire Flare for 202.66 DPR. And then round 4, a level 6 spell slot for 189.98 DPR. That makes our level 17 DPR 161.635. And our healing per round is still at 14.4. All right, so for these last 3 levels, we're getting a nice little new sorcerer subclass ability, not the capstone one, but the second to last subclass ability that is still really strong and helpful for this build. There is one thing I do here that is kind of DM dependent, and I feel like your DM would probably be okay with you doing this, but just know this technically isn't rules as written, and if some of you have a problem with that, then sorry, it just is what it is. I'll explain. So level 18, we are level 12 sorcerer, and that would give us our final feat for this build. But we have a problem. We're level 18, but we have our final feat. So if we take a feat here, it can't be an epic boon feat, and we don't have epic boon feats available to us because we're level 18 and not level 19. I feel like if your DM was a good DM, they would let you forego your feat this level. You don't take any feat, even though it's available to you, and you wait until you take take one more level in Sorcerer, and then at level 13 Sorcerer, you take your Epic Boon feat. So that's what I chose to do for this build, and I feel like most DMs would be fine with that. And I went with just the pretty simple Boon of Combat Prowess. This just makes it so that when you miss with an attack roll, you can hit instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until the start of your next turn. This just makes our damage a little more consistent with Spellfire Flare. If we happen to miss one, we can just automatically succeed and hit. It doesn't up the numbers much, but it'll actually be very useful in actual play, I feel like. And then I just went Charisma. If you choose to play this character above level 20, it'll be nice to boost that Charisma up even more in the future. And all of our ability scores are even, so that's the main reason why. And then our final level, level 14 Sorcerer, level 20 character, we get Honed Spellfire. Your Spellfire burst improves. You add your Sorcerer level to the temporary hit points granted from Bolstering Flames, and the damage of Radiant Fire increases to 1d8. Bolstering Flames, just like how it was before this ability, is much more worth it, in my opinion, than Radiant Fire, so we again are still doing Bolstering Flames. This here at level 20 will make our healing and temporary hit point giving out per round a lot higher, so that's really nice. The reason why it looks like this on here instead of how it looked before is for me to get the Spellfire auto hit from the Epic Boon feat to apply to this spell. I had to do, instead of casting Spellfire Flare at level 8, I had to do 8 separate castings of the level 1 version, but it's the same. Hope that makes sense. Anyway. So remember, at level 20, the AC we're against is higher at AC 20, and the saving throw DC is also higher. I'm going to remove Spellfire Flare real quick just so you can see. Yeah, it's a plus 10 to save, and then it is 20 AC. I mentioned that because the damage actually goes down a bit, and that's why. So it's the exact same rotation as the last one. It's even the exact same spell slots. I'm just going to read off to you the damage per round, and I'll tell you about the upgraded healing per round. So round 1, it's 42.94 DPR. Round 2, it's 208.24 DPR. Round 3, it's 197.92 DPR. Round 4, it's 185.73 DPR. And so that makes our level 20 DPR 158.7. And then our healing per round has gone all the way up to 24.9. So per round, that's pretty good at level 20, especially because it's happening all passively as you deal damage. So that's pretty sweet. Remember though, you might be fighting things that have lower armor classes and lower to save. You also might be fighting more than 3 enemies. This build will be even more effective. So just stuff to keep in mind. Thank you guys so much for watching. This build was super fun to make. Don't forget to check out my Patreon down below. Consider subscribing as well. It's one click for you, and I really appreciate it. It really helps me out a lot. And might as well check out the build I made last week that also utilized radiant damage, but in a more melee context. So check that out. See you guys next time. Peace.